My name is David Miller. I'm 65 years old, and I've spent my entire life working as a carpenter. These calloused hands have built furniture for hundreds of families in Chicago. 18 years ago, after my wife Emily passed away, Michael, my only son, convinced me to sell my house and move in with him. But before I tell you how it all started, please click the like button, subscribe to William's Revenge Stories, and comment where you're watching from. Your help is very important. Dad, why do you want to live alone? Come with us, we'll fix up the back room for you, and you'll have more company. He told me with a smile that seemed sincere. I agreed. I sold the house where I had raised my son, where I kept all the memories of my life with Emily. The money from that sale, added to what I had saved over the years, formed my small treasure, $70,000. It represented decades of work, of getting up at 5 in the morning, of coming home with splinters in my fingers and an aching back. With this, I can help my son and secure my old age, I thought, as I tucked the bank book into the back of my closet every month without fail. I gave Michael my entire pension check for expenses. Dad, you don't worry about a thing, he would say as he took the cash. I never questioned it. Family is family. My routine was simple. I got up early, made breakfast for everyone, even for Linda, my daughter-in-law, who rarely gave me more than a hurried thank you. Then I'd watch my grandson Ethan when he got home from school, help him with his homework, and tell him stories about how I built the most beautiful furniture in the neighborhood. That Tuesday morning seemed like any other day. Michael and Linda had left early, and Ethan was at school. I took the chance to make a chicken soup, the kind my son loved so much when he was a kid. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when I heard the front door open. Michael's voice and another man's voice came into the house. I peeked out discreetly. It was Robert, Linda's father, a burly man with a thick mustache and a stern look. We never really connected, but I always tried to be cordial. I was about to greet them when I heard something that made my knife stop in midair. And how are you going to pay for all that? Michael? The truck and the renovation are almost $50,000, Robert asked, in that tone he always used, like my son was just another one of his employees. Don't worry, just use my dad's card, he's loaded. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The knife slipped from my hand and hit the cutting board with a thud, stopping the conversation in the living room. Is someone there? Robert asked. It must be my dad, Michael answered. Dad, are you in the kitchen? I didn't answer. With my heart pounding in my throat, I moved silently down the hall to my room. I needed to think. I needed to understand what I had just heard. I closed the door to my room, that small space at the back of the house that had been my home for 18 years. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my trembling hands. He's loaded. My son's words hammered in my head. Loaded? My whole life I've worked, given him my pension check month after month, living in a tiny room, and Michael thought I was loaded. I opened my closet and pulled out the wooden box where I kept my important documents. There it was, my debit card. The same one I barely used because I always gave Michael the cash. I held it, wondering if they had used it before without my knowledge. The sound of approaching footsteps alerted me. I quickly put the box away and sat back down. Dad? Are you okay? Michael asked, poking his head in without even knocking. Yeah, son. Just had a bit of a headache. Came to rest. Oh, well, listen. My father-in-law is here. We're going to go look at some things for the house. Hey, would you mind lending me your card? I left mine at the office. I stared at him, looking for any trace of shame on his face. I found nothing, just that casual smile, like he was asking for a glass of water. My card? What do you need it for? Son? Nothing important. Dad? Just to pay for a few things. I'll give it back to you tonight. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to confront him, to ask him why he told his father-in-law I was loaded, but another part, maybe the father who always wants to believe the best of his son, made me hold back. I don't have it here. Son. I left it at the bank. I had to get it renewed. Michael's expression changed slightly. A flash of frustration crossed his face. Really? That's weird. You always keep it here. Yeah, but this time I had to leave it. Why don't you just use cash? It's not that simple, Dad. These are big purchases. But fine, I'll figure something out. He left my room without another word. I heard him explain to Robert that they couldn't use my card. Their voices faded. And finally, I heard the front door close. I just sat there for several minutes, feeling something inside me slowly break. The man I had raised, the one I had given everything to, was ready to use my money without asking, presenting me to his father-in-law as some old man who was loaded. With my hands still shaking, I pulled out my phone and dialed the bank's number. An automated voice greeted me, and after several menus, I finally got a real person. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. How can I help you?" said a kind woman's voice. "I need to block my card. I think someone might be trying to use it without my authorization." Of course. Let's just verify your identity. After answering her security questions, the woman blocked my card. She also checked my recent activity. "Mr. Miller, I see there's a pending transaction for $15,000 at a car dealership. Do you recognize this charge?" I felt a bucket of ice water dumped on me. "No," I answered, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't worry. Since the card is now blocked, that transaction will be automatically declined. Would you like to file a report for attempted fraud?" I thought about my son, my family. No, not right now. I just want to make sure no one can use my card. I understand. Your card is blocked, and we'll send a new one to your branch. I would also recommend changing your online banking passwords. I followed all her instructions, and when I hung up, I felt physically exhausted, like I had just carried an entire wardrobe by myself. I decided to get out of the house. I needed air. I needed to think far away from those walls, which suddenly felt like a prison. I grabbed my hat, my wallet, and the house keys. As I walked, I stopped at the park where I used to take Michael when he was a boy. I sat on a bench and watched the children play. Time had passed so quickly. I remembered how I used to work double shifts just to buy him what he needed. How Emily and I skipped luxuries to make sure he got a good education. "David, what a surprise to see you here." I looked up and saw Teresa, a woman my age who had been friends with Emily. Her warm smile was a stark contrast to the storm inside me. "Teresa, good to see you," I replied, trying to smile. "Is everything all right? You look worried." I don't know what it was, the familiarity of her face or the genuine concern in her voice, but I suddenly felt the need to talk. I told her what I had heard that morning, how my son was planning to use my money without asking, how I'd been giving him my pension for years, while he saw me as someone who was loaded. Teresa listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she took my hand. "David, what they are doing to you is not right. You've worked your entire life. That money is yours. It's your security for the years to come." "I know, but he's my son. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding." Misunderstandings don't try to charge $15,000 to your card without your permission, Teresa replied firmly. You know, my daughter is renting out an apartment in her building. It's small, but nice, and the price is reasonable. Maybe you should consider it. The idea of moving out, of having my own space after so much time, made my heart race. But guilt immediately washed over me. Leave my family? I don't know if I could. David, sometimes the best way to love your family is to teach them to respect you. Think about it. I got back to the house with that idea spinning in my head. As I walked in, I heard raised voices coming from the living room. Michael and Linda were arguing. I told you it was a bad idea to use his card without telling him, Linda yelled. My dad would have never found out. We give him everything he needs. What more does he want? Well, now my father is furious. He looked like an idiot at the dealership when the card was declined in front of everyone. I was frozen in the hallway, so they had tried to use my card, and not just for anything, but for $15,000. I felt my blood boil. Can someone tell me what's going on here? I asked, walking into the living room. They both jumped. Michael's face became a mask of poorly hidden nervousness. Dad, we didn't hear you come in. It's nothing. Just a misunderstanding with the bank. A misunderstanding? Or did you try to use my card without my permission to buy something for $15,000? The silence that followed was all the confirmation I needed. How did you know? Michael finally asked, his shoulders slumping. This morning I heard you talking to your father-in-law. Just use my dad's card. He's loaded. Those were your words. Michael turned pale. Linda was staring at the floor, avoiding my eyes. Dad, it's not what it looks like. We were going to ask to borrow the money anyway. We just fast-tracked it because... Because what? Because you assumed I'd say yes? Because you think my money is your money? Come on. Dad, you've always given us everything. What's the difference? The difference, son, is that it's one thing for me to give and another thing entirely for you to take. That money represents my entire life of work. Linda, who had been quiet, chimed in with a tone that chilled my blood. Mr. Miller, with all due respect, you've been living with us for 18 years. We pay for the house, the food, the utilities. You barely contribute with your pension, which doesn't even cover what you consume. I was speechless. Barely contribute? After giving you every single penny of my pension for years? What are you saying, Linda? I've given every cent I get to help this house. Yes, but it's not enough, she answered coldly. An old man like you creates a lot of expenses. The medicine, the doctor visits, the special food you need. That's enough. Linda, Michael interrupted, maybe noticing the pained look on my face. But the damage was done. My daughter-in-law's words had shown me how they really saw me. Not as the father who had given everything for his son, not as the grandfather who lovingly cared for his grandson, but as a burden, an expensive old man, an inconvenience. I understand, I said finally, feeling a strange calm replace the pain. Now I understand perfectly, without another word. I went to my room. I closed the door behind me and sat on the bed, looking around. This little room that had been my home for almost 2 decades suddenly felt like a gilded cage, one I had been a prisoner in without even realizing it. I pulled out my phone and called Teresa. Is that apartment you mentioned still available? I asked, without any preamble. Yes. David, do you want me to set up a viewing for tomorrow? Please. That night, as I listened to Michael and Linda talking in low voices in the living room, I made a decision that would change my life forever. At 65 years old, it was time to start over, to reclaim my dignity and my freedom. I didn't know exactly what was waiting for me, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, after all, it wasn't too late to have a life of my own. The next day, I woke with a determination I hadn't felt in years. I put on my best shirt, the one Emily gave me for our last anniversary, and I left the house early without saying goodbye to anyone. Teresa was waiting for me on the corner. Her warm smile gave me the strength for what I was about to do. "Good morning, David. Ready to see your possible new home?" I nodded, without a word. As we walked to the building, Teresa filled me in. It's small, but very well kept. Second floor. It has one bedroom, a full bath, a kitchen diner, and a small living room. The last owner was a retired professor who went to live with his daughter in Denver. He's selling it for $30,000. Firm. $30,000. Less than half of my savings. The idea of having my own place, after so many years living in a back room, brought a lump to my throat. The building was modest, but clean, with flower pots by the entrance. We walked up the stairs slowly. My knees aren't what they used to be, and Teresa opened the door to apartment 205. The first thing that hit me was the light. A large window in the living room let in the morning sunday, illuminating the small but cozy space. I walked through every corner, feeling my heart race at the possibility of starting over. "What do you think, David?" Teresa asked after a while. "I like it," I replied simply. "Do you think someone could move in soon?" "The owner is eager to sell. If you decide to buy it and pay in cash, you could move in within a few days." The decision had pretty much been made the moment I heard my son offer my card to his father-in-law. Still, I wanted to be prudent. "Can I think on it until tomorrow?" "Of course. I'll tell the owner you're interested." When I got back to the house, I found Michael waiting for me in the living room. His expression was a mix of regret and anxiety. "Dad, where were you? I got worried when I didn't see you in your room." "I went for a walk," I replied, to avoiding specifics. I needed to think. "About yesterday? I want to apologize. I shouldn't have tried to use your card without permission. It was a mistake." I looked at him. His apology sounded rehearsed, like he was more worried about the consequences of his actions than about having hurt me. "A mistake, son, or was it a plan? How long have you been planning to use my money?" Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's not like that, Dad. It was just a moment of weakness. My father-in-law was pressuring me to buy a new truck and do a remodel. He said it was the least I could do for my family. And my money is the solution? The money I've saved my entire life? I was planning to pay you back, little by little," he justified, though his eyes avoided mine. "Besides, you always say that everything you have is for us. It's one thing if I decide to give a son. It's another thing entirely for you to take without asking." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ethan, my grandson, returning from school. When he saw me, he ran to hug me, like he always did. "Grandpa, look what I made at school." He showed me a drawing of him and me in what looked like a park. My heart ached, thinking about how my decision would affect this little boy I loved so much. "It's beautiful, kiddo. You're quite an artist." Michael used his son's presence to change the subject, but the tension remained, floating between us. That night, while everyone slept, I checked my bank book by the dim light of my lamp. The $70,000 I had saved, it was my security. my dignity, my future. To think my own son saw it as extra money he could spend. It hurt deeply. I remembered when Michael was little, and I worked late at the carpentry shop to pay for a better school. How Emily and I skipped meals so he could have new shoes or a book he needed. All that effort, all those sacrifices. For what? To become an old man who is loaded. The next morning, I called Teresa early. I want to buy the apartment, I told her bluntly. I'm going to the bank today to get the money. Are you sure? David? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The bank was more complicated than I expected. The teller looked at me suspiciously when I asked to withdraw $30,000 in cash. Mr. Miller, can I ask what you need this much cash for? I'm buying an apartment, I answered firmly. Wouldn't a direct transfer be better? Carrying that much cash is dangerous. I prefer to do it my way, miss. After several forms and a verification call, they finally gave me the money in a discreet envelope. I was nervous walking out of the bank, but Teresa was waiting outside to go with me straight to the notary. The closing was fast. I signed the papers, handed over the money, and received the keys to my new home. My home. After 18 years living under my son's roof, I finally had my own space. Congratulations, Mr. Miller, the notary said, shaking my hand. The apartment is officially yours. When I returned to Michael's house, I was surprised to find Robert sitting in the living room with my son and Linda. The three of them fell silent when I walked in. Dad, where have you been all day? Michael asked, his tone trying to be casual but betraying his nerves. I had things to do, I said vaguely. Good afternoon, Robert. The man barely nodded in response. His expression was serious, almost hostile. Mr. Miller, he began, with that deep voice he always used to intimidate. Your son told me about a misunderstanding with your card yesterday. There was no misunderstanding. Robert, my son tried to use my card without my permission to buy something expensive. I blocked it. It was a communication error. Linda chimed in quickly. Michael thought you'd be okay with it. After all, you've always told us we could count on your help. Helping is one thing. Taking my money without asking is another. Robert leaned forward, staring at me. Mr. Miller, we're all family here. And in a family, you support your own. My daughter and your son are trying to improve their situation, to give Ethan a better life. And that justifies taking my money? Nobody took anything, he replied, in a tone suggesting I was overreacting. It was just an attempt to speed things up. Michael assured me you'd be on board. I stayed quiet, looking at the three of them. I understood then. I was facing a united front. They had already decided that my money was theirs by right, that my decades of work were at their disposal. I appreciate your concern for Ethan, I said finally, but my money is mine, and I decide how and when to spend it. Robert snorted with obvious contempt. I see selfishness comes with age. You live here practically for free, and now you refuse to help your own family. Dad, Linda cut in, though her tone suggested more embarrassment at her father's bluntness than disagreement. No, Linda, let's be honest, Robert continued. Your father-in-law has been living off your generosity for years. The least he could do is chip in when you need him. My blood boiled, but I stayed calm. Living off your generosity? I've given you my entire pension check every month for 18 years. I've watched my grandson while you work. I've cooked, cleaned, fixed things in this house. Is that living off your generosity? Your pension doesn't even cover what you consume, Robert said with disdain. An old man like you has a lot of expenses. That's enough. Robert, Michael finally said, maybe noticing how pale I'd become. My dad has always been generous with us. This is just a misunderstanding. But the damage was done. Robert's words only confirmed what I already suspected. To them, I was a burden, an expensive old man, an inconvenience. I understand, I said, standing up slowly. Now I understand perfectly, without another word. I went to my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed, feeling a strange mix of pain and liberation. The decision I made this morning was the right one. It was time to leave. I started pulling my clothes from the closet, packing them carefully into the old suitcase I'd last used on my final trip with Emily, over 20 years ago. As I did, I heard them arguing in the living room. "You ruined it," Linda hissed at her father. "Now he'll never help us with the money." "It's just a matter of applying more pressure," Robert replied calmly. "These old guys always fold when they feel guilty." "He's my father, not an ATM." Michael protested weakly, though his tone suggested more concern about losing access to my money than about my feelings. I paused, leaning against the closet. I had lived 65 years. I had worked since I was 14. I had built a family. I had survived the loss of my wife. And now, in the supposed sanctuary of my son's home, I was being treated like an object to be squeezed for value, an old man who was loaded. I continued packing with renewed determination. I packed my important documents, a few pictures of Emily, the few keepsakes I had. Everything else could stay. When I finished, I lay down on the bed, fully clothed. Tomorrow, while they were all out, I would go to my new home. No drama, no more confrontation. I would just leave. I barely slept that night. My mind replayed the last few days over and over, trying to find the exact moment I became a stranger to my own son, an old man with extra money. The next morning, I waited patiently for everyone to leave. Michael left early for work, without stopping by my room as he used to. Linda took Ethan to school, not without shooting me a cold look when she saw me in the kitchen. As soon as I was alone, I called Teresa. "All set?" she asked when she answered. "Yes. Can you help me with the bags?" Half an hour later, Teresa arrived with her eldest son, a strong young man who carried my few belongings to the taxi waiting outside. Before leaving, I looked one last time at the small room that had been my home for 18 years. So many lonely nights, so many routine mornings, so much time wasted believing I was where I was supposed to be. I left a letter on my bed, a letter for Michael, explaining my decision, a letter for Ethan, promising him I would always be his grandfather, no matter where I lived. I didn't mention the betrayal, the attempted theft, the hurtful words. What was the point? Some wounds are too deep to put into words. My new apartment welcomed me with that warm light I had loved from the start. Teresa helped me unpack, putting my few things in the empty spaces. "You'll need furniture, David. You can't live like this. Tomorrow, I'll go buy the basics. For now, the bed the last owner left is enough." When Teresa left, I was alone in the middle of my new home. The silence was different here. It wasn't the oppressive silence of my back room at Michael's, but a silence full of possibility. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. People passed by, busy with their own lives. The phone started ringing in my pocket. It was Michael. I let it ring until it stopped. A minute later, a text came in. "Dad, where are you? Linda said your things are gone." I didn't answer. I needed this moment for myself, this first day of my new life. The calls continued all afternoon. Michael, Linda. I even got a call from an unknown number that I suspect was Robert. All the messages had the same urgent, disbelieving tone, as if my decision to leave was incomprehensible, as if I had no right to seek my own happiness. That night, someone knocked on my door. I peeked out the window and saw Michael standing outside the building. He looked worried, staring up at the windows. Teresa must have told him where I was. I didn't open the door. I wasn't ready for that conversation, for the excuses, for the attempts at manipulation. I needed time to strengthen my resolve, to get used to this new feeling of freedom. Michael left after half an hour of calling. His last words before he left echoed in the empty hallway. "This is abandonment." "Dad, you can't just disappear like this." Abandonment? Me? After 18 years of giving every penny, every minute of my time, I was abandoning them. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the only piece of furniture in my new home, and for the first time in a long time, I let the tears flow. They weren't tears of sadness, but of release, of acknowledging the truth I had denied for so long. At 65 years old, I was starting over, alone, but free, with less money, but with my dignity intact. That night I slept deeply for the first time in years, without the noise of Michael's TV, without the low-voiced arguments between him and Linda, without the constant reminder that I was living on borrowed time in a house that would never be mine. When I woke up, I looked out the window and saw the sun lighting up the street. A new day, a new beginning, at 65 years old. Life was giving me a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. The following days were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. I bought some basic furniture, a table with 2 chairs, a simple sofa, a small television, nothing fancy, but all of it was mine. Teresa visited me almost every day, bringing homemade food and helping me organize my new home. Her company made the transition less lonely. "David, your apartment is really coming together," she commented one afternoon, as we put away some plates she had gifted me. "How do you feel?" "Like I've woken up from a long dream," I answered honestly. "Sometimes I wonder why I didn't do this sooner." My phone, which I'd kept on silent most of the time, started to vibrate on the table. It was Michael. Again, he had been calling nonstop for a week, alternating between messages of concern and messages of blame. "Aren't you going to answer?" Teresa asked. I sighed deeply. "I'm not ready yet. You'll have to talk to him eventually. David, he's your son, after all." I knew Teresa was right, but every time I thought about facing Michael, I remembered his words. "Just use my dad's card. He's loaded." And the pain returned, just as sharp as the first day. One morning, almost 10 days after I moved, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Ethan with Michael. The boy ran to hug me, while his father stood in the doorway, looking awkward. "Grandpa, I missed you so much," Ethan cried, clinging to my waist. "I missed you too, kiddo," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. I hadn't realized how much I missed my grandson until that moment. I looked up at Michael, who still hadn't moved. "Do you want to come in?" They came into my small apartment. Ethan explored the space with childlike curiosity, while Michael looked around with a critical expression. "It's cozy," he finally said, as if he couldn't find anything else to say. "Are you comfortable here, Dad?" Very comfortable. Thank you. The awkward silence was broken by Ethan, who was bouncing excitedly. Grandpa, can I come for a sleepover? We can watch movies and tell stories like before. Of course, kiddo. Anytime. Michael cleared his throat. Ethan, why don't you go see if Grandpa has any snacks in the kitchen while we talk? Once the boy was gone, Michael sat across from me at the small table. His expression was a mix of regret and wounded pride. Dad, why did you leave like that? You worried all of us. I left a letter explaining my reasons. A cold letter that explains nothing. 18 years. And you just leave without a word. I felt my anger rise. And what did you want me to say? Son? That I realized my own son sees my money as extra? That I found out I was being treated like an expensive burden? Michael had the decency to look ashamed. It was a mistake in judgment. Dad, I never meant to hurt you. The card thing was a stupid impulse. I was pressured by my father-in-law. And the expenses I create? Was that your father-in-law talking too? Linda was upset. She didn't mean what she said. We never saw you as a burden, Dad. I wanted to believe him. I really did. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. But something in his eyes, the way they darted to the window, told me he wasn't being completely honest. You should come home. Dad, he continued, your room is still there, waiting. Ethan misses you terribly. This is my home now, son. I bought it with my money. The money you said I had so much of. Michael tensed up. You bought this place? How much did it cost? $30,000, I replied calmly. I saw him doing the math in his head. He knew exactly how much I had, which only confirmed my suspicions. Dad, you didn't need to spend that much. At home, you didn't pay rent, or utilities, or I paid with my entire pension every month. I cut him off, and with my work, taking care of Ethan, cooking, fixing things around the house. But that's not enough to. He stopped abruptly, realizing he was repeating the same hurtful words. Too late. Not enough, I repeated slowly. There's the truth. Son, it will never be enough for you. That's why I'd rather live with less, but with dignity. Michael changed tactics. Think about Ethan. Dad. He doesn't understand why his grandpa doesn't live with us. He thinks he's being punished. Using my grandson to manipulate me. That was a low blow. Even for Michael. Before I could answer, Ethan returned. Grandpa, I didn't find snacks, but I saw your tools. Are you going to build furniture here? I smiled at the boy. I am. Kiddo, I was thinking of making a small bookshelf. I can help you. Dad never has time to teach me stuff like that. Michael shifted uncomfortably at his son's innocent comment. Our conversation was over, but the unspoken words hung between us like a storm cloud. They stayed for a couple of hours. I played with Ethan. I showed him how to sand a piece of wood. For a moment, it was like old times. But Michael's tense presence was a constant reminder that nothing would ever be the same. When they left, Michael made one last attempt. Dad, at least tell me when you'll visit. Linda wants to talk to you too, to clear the air. I need time, son. You can bring Ethan whenever you want, but for now, I'm keeping my distance. Michael's face hardened. You know this is affecting the whole family. Right? My father-in-law is furious. He says your attitude is irresponsible. Irresponsible? For protecting what's mine? For dividing the family, he says at your age. You should be thinking more about us and less about yourself. Your father-in-law has no right to an opinion about my life or my money. Michael sighed, frustrated. Just think about it, okay? Everyone makes mistakes. It's not worth destroying a family over a misunderstanding. After they left, I sat by the window, watching the street. Was I being too hard? Should I forgive and forget? The thought of going back to that house, of feeling watched, used, it made me feel like I was suffocating. No, I had made the right decision. At 65, I deserved to live with dignity, not as a walking ATM. The next few days were relatively calm. I started new routines: breakfast by the window, walks in the nearby park, visiting the market, working on small carpentry projects, the freedom to decide my own schedule. It was intoxicating. One afternoon, coming back from the market, I noticed a familiar car parked near my building. Robert's black Mercedes. My heart sped up. What was he doing here? I entered the building cautiously, walking slowly up the stairs. When I got to my floor, I saw Robert talking to one of my neighbors. When he saw me, he smiled. That calculating smile I knew so well. "Mr. Miller, what a coincidence." "Robert, what are you doing here?" "Visiting a friend who lives nearby. I saw you walk in and thought I'd say hello." It was an obvious lie. He had come looking for me. "If you'll excuse me, I'm in a hurry." "Of course, but I was wondering if we could talk, you know, man to man, without the kids around." Something in his tone put me on high alert, but I decided it was better to face him head on. "Come in," I said, opening my door. "But I don't have much time." Robert entered, his eyes scanning every detail. He looked at the simple furniture, the fresh paint, the few decorations. "An interesting place," he finally said, "though it must be a big change. After living in a large house with your son, a change for the better." Robert sat down, uninvited. "Mr. Miller, let's get to the point. Your attitude is causing problems in my family." "My attitude? What are you talking about?" "This elderly tantrum. Abandoning your family over a small misunderstanding with a card." I took a deep breath, controlling my anger. It wasn't a tantrum. My son tried to use my money, and I found out I'm seen as a burden. Families argue. "Mr. Miller, things are said in the heat of the moment, but you don't abandon your family over it." "I haven't abandoned anyone. I simply decided to live on my own, with my own money." Robert changed tactics, his voice suddenly friendly. "Listen, I understand you're hurt, but think about Michael, Linda, little Ethan. They need you." "Do they need me? Or my money?" His expression hardened for a second, before he forced another smile. "Come on, David, we're men of the world. You worked your whole life for your family, right? What good is that money sitting in the bank when it could be helping your son, your grandson?" "My money is to secure my future, Robert, for my medicine, for my needs. And later, when you're gone, wouldn't it be better to see it well invested now in Ethan's education, in improving the house where your family lives? When I'm gone, my money will go to whomever I choose. In the meantime, it's mine." Robert dropped all pretense of kindness, his face twisted in disgust. "You are a selfish old man, David, after everything your son has done for you, keeping you for years." I paid my way. I interrupted, my patience gone, with my entire pension, every month. And I watched my grandson, and helped in the house. I was not a free guest. Your miserable pension didn't even cover your meds. Do you have any idea how much Michael and Linda spent on you? Were they spending, or were they investing, hoping to get it all back, with interest, when I died? Robert stood up, his face red with anger. You have one last chance, David. Go back home with your family. Share that money you're hoarding, and we'll forget this whole incident. Or what, Robert? What happens if I decide to stay here and protect what's mine? He stepped closer, until I could smell his expensive cologne, his cigar breath. There are ways, David, ways to declare an old man incompetent, legal ways to protect him from his own irrational decisions. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't an empty threat. I'd heard stories. You'd need proof, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Proof can be fabricated, David. An old man who suddenly abandons his home, spends large sums of money impulsively, shows erratic behavior. Any doctor friend could diagnose the beginning of dementia. He walked to the door, letting his words sink in like knives. Think about it. A family should always stick together, don't you think? When the door closed, I collapsed onto the sofa, my legs shaking. It wasn't just the fear, it was the brutal truth. This was never about family, or unity, or love. It was about money, my money. I remembered Emily's words, years ago, when Michael first started dating Linda. Be careful with that family, David. Her father has the eyes of someone who values money more than people. As always, Emily had seen the truth long before I did. Robert's threats weren't just talk. I knew his reputation. He was a ruthless man. If he decided to have me declared incompetent, my freedom, my dignity, and my money would be in serious danger. I barely slept that night. Every noise made me jump. At dawn, I made a decision. I called Teresa. I need the number of a good lawyer, I said, without preamble. One who understands elder rights. What happened, David? You sound upset. I told her about Robert's visit, his threats, whom I fear. Teresa listened, and then said firmly, I know the perfect person. My nephew Daniel is a lawyer. He specializes in family law and has handled several elder abuse cases. He'll help you. That same afternoon, Daniel came to my apartment. He was a young man, maybe 35, with intelligent eyes and a calm way of speaking that inspired confidence. Mr. Miller, my aunt told me about your situation. First, I want you to know what your son's father-in-law is describing is a form of elder abuse. Threatening to declare someone incompetent to control their assets is a crime. His words gave me some relief, but I was still worried. Can they do it? It's extremely difficult without solid proof. You are clearly competent. You live alone. You manage your money. You make rational decisions. No serious court would accept such a petition. As Daniel was explaining my rights, we heard a commotion in the hallway. Michael's voice yelling for me. Dad, open the door. I know you're in there. Daniel looked at me. Do you want me to stay for this conversation? I nodded, grateful. When I opened the door, Michael burst in, but stopped short when he saw Daniel. Who is this man? What is he doing here? This is Daniel, my lawyer, I replied, as calmly as I could. Your lawyer? What the hell do you need a lawyer for, Dad? To protect my rights. After the threats from your father-in-law. Michael went pale. What are you talking about? My father-in-law just came to talk to you, to try to fix things. To fix things? He threatened to have me declared incompetent so you could take my money. That's ridiculous. Dad, you're exaggerating. You misunderstood. Daniel stepped in, his voice professional. Mr. Ramirez, I assure you, your father is not exaggerating. Threats of this nature constitute elder abuse, and they are taken very seriously by the authorities. Abuse? What are you talking about? We took care of my father for years. We gave him a roof, food, while trying to access his money without his consent, Daniel added. That could also constitute a crime. Michael looked at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and betrayal. So now you're going to sue your own family? Dad, your son, your daughter-in-law, your grandson's grandfather? I don't want to sue anyone. Play, son. I just want to be left alone. I want you to respect my decisions and my money. Your damn money! Michael spat bitterly. It was always more important to you than we were, wasn't it? No, son. What's important is respect, honesty, trust, values we seem to have lost. Michael looked at Daniel, then at me, and shook his head in disgust. You've changed, Dad. The money has made you paranoid. I don't even recognize the man who raised me. The man who raised you is still here. Son, he just finally sees things he didn't want to see before. Michael went to the door, but turned back one last time. My father-in-law was right. Maybe you do need professional help. Dad, this isn't normal. When the door closed, I felt a huge weight on my shoulders. The lawyer put his hand on my arm. Mr. Miller, what you just saw is a common tactic. They try to make you doubt your own sanity, your own decisions. Don't let them. He's my son, I whispered, my voice breaking. My only son. I know, and that's why it hurts the most. But you must stand firm. Your decision to become independent was correct and legitimate. There is nothing abnormal about protecting what's yours. That night, after Daniel left, I sat by the window, looking at the city lights. 65 years of life, of hard work, and now I was in a battle for my dignity, my money, my freedom. How did we get here? When did my son start to see me, not as a father, but as an obstacle? Robert's words echoed in my mind. There are ways to declare an old man incompetent. And Michael's. Maybe you do need professional help. The threat was clear. They were willing to question my sanity, just to get my money. As the city lights twinkled, I made a decision. I would not give in to fear. I would not be intimidated. At 65 years old, I was fighting the most important battle of my life, the battle for my dignity. The next few days passed in a strange calm. Daniel, my lawyer, called me daily to update me on the documents he was preparing, a preventative power of attorney, an updated will, medical certificates proving my full mental capacity, small legal shields against the storm we both knew was coming. Teresa kept visiting, but now I could see she was worried. David, my niece at the bank, she said Robert and Michael were there, asking about your bank records. Can they give them that information? No, of course not. But the fact they're trying, be careful, David. Those people aren't going to give up. One afternoon, as I was fixing a chair, I got a text from Ethan. Grandpa, I miss you. Mom and Dad fight all the time since you left. Can I visit? The message squeezed my heart. My grandson, caught in a battle he didn't understand. I replied, Of course. Kiddo, tell your dad to bring you over. I didn't expect it to be so soon. That same night, Michael showed up with Ethan. My grandson ran to hug me, while my son stood at the door, his expression dark. Ethan wanted to see you, he said simply. I'll be back in 2 hours. You don't want to come in? I have things to do, he replied sharply. 2 hours. Dad, he left, leaving me alone with my grandson. Ethan was unusually quiet, playing distractedly with a piece of wood. Are you okay, kiddo? You seem sad. He looked up at me, his eyes so much like Emily's. Grandpa, why don't you want to live with us anymore? Did I do something wrong? No, my boy. Of course not, I said, hugging him. You did nothing wrong. This is a grown-up thing. Problems that we have sometimes. Dad says you got selfish, that you love your money more than us. And Grandpa Robert says you're crazy. My blood boiled. But I kept calm for Ethan. And what do you think, kiddo? Do you think I'm crazy or selfish? Ethan shook his head. I think you're sad, like when Grandma died, and you didn't want to talk to anyone. But now, you don't want to talk to me either. His words hit me like a hammer. In my battle with Michael and Robert, I had neglected the most important thing, my relationship with my grandson. You're right, Ethan. I have been sad and worried, and I haven't given you the attention you deserve. I'm sorry. Why are you sad? Grandpa, how could I explain it to a 10-year-old? How could I talk about betrayal and greed without destroying the image he had of his parents? Sometimes, kiddo, grown-ups have disagreements. Your dad and I, we have different ideas about my money and about where I should live. But that doesn't change how much I love you. Ethan nodded, processing my words. Grandpa Robert comes over a lot now. He talks to Mom and Dad when they think I'm not listening. They say mean things about you. What kind of things, kiddo? That you need to see a special doctor, that you need treatment, that they need to protect your money from you. Every word confirmed my fears. They were planning something that involved protecting my money by declaring me unfit. Do you know when they're going to take me to this doctor? Ethan hesitated. Tomorrow. Grandpa Robert got an appointment with a doctor friend of his. They said they're going to take you to breakfast to talk. But then they're taking you to the doctor. A chill ran down my spine. The trap was set, and I almost walked right into it. Thank you for telling me, Ethan. This is very important. You did the right thing. Are you going to hide, Grandpa? Are you not going to go? No, kiddo, I'm not going to hide, but I am going to be ready. We spent the rest of the time playing checkers. As we moved the pieces, I was moving pieces in my mind, preparing for the much more dangerous game awaiting me. When Michael came to pick him up, Ethan hugged me tight. I love you, Grandpa. Promise me everything will be okay. I promise, kiddo. Everything will be okay. As soon as they left, I called Daniel. I explained the situation, every detail. It's exactly what we were afraid of, Mr. Miller. They're attempting a fraudulent declaration of incapacity. I need you to come to my office right now. An hour later, I was sitting in Daniel's office. He had all the documents ready, the recent medical certificates, the power of attorney, even a preliminary complaint for attempted financial elder abuse. Mr. Miller, here's what we do. When they come for you tomorrow, you go with them. Go with them? To the fraudulent doctor's office? Exactly. But you won't be alone. I'll follow you, discreetly. and we'll have a notary public and an independent geriatric specialist waiting nearby. And then what? The moment they try to make you sign anything or subject you to an evaluation, we intervene. We'll present the complaint, the medical certificates, everything. We'll catch them red-handed. The plan was risky, but effective. Instead of hiding, I would walk right into their trap, but with my own protections. What if they try something drastic? Robert is not a man who likes being confronted. Daniel looked at me, his face serious. I also have contacts at the DA's office. If there is any kind of threat or physical coercion, the response will be immediate. That night, as I laid out my clothes, I looked at Emily's picture. "What would you think?" "Em," I whispered, "am I doing the right thing?" I could almost hear her answer. "David, a father's love is priceless, but so is dignity. Defend what's yours. But don't forget that Michael, despite everything, is still your son." With that thought, I took a piece of paper and started writing a letter, not for Michael or Linda, for Ethan, a letter he could read when he was older. "Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means you're old enough to understand complicated grown-up things." I wrote for an hour, pouring out my feelings, my fears, my hopes. The next morning, I dressed with special care, my best shirt, my good pants. I wanted anyone who saw me to see a man who was far from confused or unkempt. At 9 o'clock sharp, the buzzer rang. When I opened the door, I found Michael, Linda, and, to my surprise, Robert. All three of them had forced, friendly smiles. "Good morning, Dad," Michael said. "You look great." "Thank you, son." "Good morning, David," Robert chimed in. "We've come to take you to breakfast. There's a new restaurant nearby we want to show you." "How thoughtful," I replied, noticing them exchange looks of relief. They thought I suspected nothing. "Let me just grab my jacket, and I'll be right with you." As I grabbed my jacket, I sent a quick text to Daniel. "All three are here. It's starting." The restaurant was an elegant place. White tablecloths, waiters in vests. Robert asked for a private table in the corner. "Do you like the place, Mr. Miller?" Linda asked, trying to be pleasant. "It's very nice, though I wonder why all the luxury, just for a family breakfast." I saw them tense up. "It's a special occasion." "Dad," Michael said, "we want to talk to you about something important." "Is it about the doctor you're planning to take me to after breakfast?" I asked casually, taking a sip of water. All three of them froze. Robert was the first to recover. "I see Ethan has been talking," he said, with a forced laugh. "But it's not what it sounds like, David. We just want you to get a checkup. At your age, it's important." "My health is perfectly fine. Robert, I had a full physical 2 weeks ago. But this doctor is a specialist. In seniors," Linda added, "he can detect problems that other doctors miss. Problems like, what? Dementia? Inability to make financial decisions?" The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. Finally, Robert decided to be blunt. "Mr. Miller, let's be frank. We're worried. Your recent behavior is concerning. Abandoning your home, spending a large sum on an unnecessary apartment, isolating yourself. These are not rational decisions. On the contrary, they are the most rational decisions I've made in years. I left because I discovered I was seen as a burden, and that my son was planning to use my money without my permission." "That's not true," Linda exclaimed. "We've always respected you." "Respect me? By calling me an expensive old man? By trying to steal from my bank account? Dad, please, Michael interrupted, noticing other diners looking. Don't make a scene. We just want to help you. Help me do what, son? Help me lose my money, my independence, my dignity? Robert slammed the table, his frustration showing. Enough games, Mr. Miller. You are clearly not in a condition to manage your own money. As a family, we have a responsibility to protect you, even from yourself. And this protection involves taking me to a doctor friend of yours who will declare me incompetent with fake reports. They stared at me, stunned. They hadn't expected me to know the details. That's a serious accusation, Dad, Michael said, his voice trembling. Is it? Then explain why your father-in-law mentioned that proof can be fabricated when he threatened me in my apartment. Robert turned pale. He never thought I'd repeat that. Mr. Miller, you're twisting my words. No, Robert, I remember exactly. An old man who suddenly abandons his home, spends large sums. Any doctor friend could diagnose the beginning of dementia. Those were your exact words. Linda looked at her father in horror. Dad, did you really say that? Robert ignored her. His eyes were locked on me. Cold. Calculating. Be that as it may, David. This drama changes nothing. You will come with us to see the doctor, and you will submit to an evaluation. Or what? Will you take me by force? If necessary, we'll get a court order. There's precedent. Michael looked increasingly sick. Dad, please, it's just a doctor's appointment. If you're fine, like you say, you have nothing to fear, except that the doctor is your father-in-law's friend, and they already have the diagnosis written. That's not true, Michael protested, but his voice had no conviction. I looked at my son, searching for the boy I raised. I only saw a weak man, manipulated by greed. Michael, are you really willing to do this to your own father? To have me declared incompetent based on lies? Just to get my money? It's not like that. Dad, we just want to protect you. Protect my money? You mean? Robert lost his patience. That's it. This is a waste of time, Mr. Miller. You will either come voluntarily, or we will take more drastic measures. At that exact moment, as if on cue, Daniel appeared at our table, dressed in a perfect suit, briefcase in hand. Good morning. I hope I'm not interrupting the family breakfast, he said, with a polite, firm smile. Who are you? Robert demanded. Daniel Vega, Mr. David Miller's attorney. May I? Without waiting for an answer, Daniel pulled up a chair and sat next to me. Robert's face was a mask of shock and fury. Mr. Miller doesn't need a lawyer for a family visit. On the contrary, Daniel replied calmly. My client has informed me of specific threats against his financial independence and his legal capacity. I'm here to ensure his rights are respected. Michael looked at me. You hired a lawyer against us. Dad? Not against you, Sohn. To protect myself. Daniel opened his briefcase and took out several documents. Allow me to be clear. We are aware of your plan to take Mr. Miller to a fraudulent medical evaluation, with the goal of having him declared incapacitated. We also have evidence of a prior attempt to access his funds, as well as testimony of verbal threats. He placed the papers on the table. Recent medical certificates, power of attorney, a preliminary complaint. If you proceed with this plan, you will face charges for attempted financial elder abuse, fraud, and possibly conspiracy. The legal consequences would be significant. Robert stared at the documents. His carefully built plan was crumbling. This is absurd. We're just worried about his health. In that case, Daniel continued, you'll have no objection to him being evaluated by the independent geriatric specialist who is waiting outside, in the presence of a notary public, to certify that the process is transparent and free of coercion. The trap had been reversed. Now, they were the ones who were caught. We don't need unknown doctors, Robert insisted, but his voice had lost its power. We have our own specialist. Your specialist will have to explain to the medical board why he was willing to issue a prefabricated diagnosis, Daniel replied. Unless, of course, this was all just a misunderstanding. The tension was thick. Linda looked back and forth between her father and her husband. Michael looked like he'd aged 10 years. Finally, Robert spoke. This isn't over. All other ways of handling this are illegal, I'm afraid, Daniel said, with a polite smile. And all of them are preemptively documented in the complaint we will file if you make any other moves against my client. He turned to me. Mr. Miller, do you wish to proceed with the formal complaint now, or would you prefer to give your family one last chance? This was the moment. I looked at Michael, at Linda, at Robert. They were beaten, exposed. I could push the button. I had every right. But I thought of Ethan. I thought of how a formal complaint, a public scandal, would affect my grandson. He didn't deserve to see his parents face criminal charges, no matter how much they deserved it. I'll give them one last chance, I said finally. With conditions? Daniel asked. What conditions? Michael whispered. First, you will never again question my mental capacity or attempt to access my money without my explicit consent. Second, Robert, you will not contact me, directly or indirectly, ever again. Third, you will respect my independence and my right to live my life as I choose. Linda nodded quickly. Of course, Mr. Miller. This was all a terrible misunderstanding. No, Linda, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate attempt to steal from me, but for Ethan's sake, I am willing to let it go, as long as you respect my conditions. Robert, the proud, powerful patriarch, was looking at me now with a mix of hatred and reluctant respect. He knew he'd been beaten by an old man he had completely underestimated. One more thing, I added. I want to keep seeing my grandson regularly. He is innocent in all of this, and I will not allow you to use him as a bargaining chip. Michael, his eyes wet with tears, just nodded. I would never stop you from seeing Ethan. Dad, he's the only good thing left between us. And so, breakfast ended. Robert left first, without a goodbye, his face a rigid mask. Linda followed him, muttering a quiet apology. Michael stayed for a moment. Do you really think I was trying to steal from you, Dad? I don't know, son. I want to believe you were just influenced. But the evidence shows you were willing to let it happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I know. But you did. And it will take a long time for that wound to heal, if it ever does. He left. His shoulders slumped. Daniel looked at me. Are you sure about not filing the complaint, Mr. Miller? You have a solid case. I'm sure. I don't want my grandson to grow up with that weight. They'll face the natural consequences of their actions. 6 months have passed since that breakfast. My life has found a new rhythm. My small apartment is now fully furnished. mostly with pieces I built myself. My workshop is my sanctuary. Ethan visits me twice a week. His father drops him off, punctually. Our encounters are brief, formal. The relationship with Michael is still tense, but at least it exists. I barely exchange words with Linda, and I haven't seen Robert again. Teresa remains my faithful friend, my support. Sometimes she jokes that we should get married, just to give the neighbors something to talk about. We laugh, and for now, that's enough. The money they wanted so badly is still mine, managed by me. A portion of it is in an educational trust fund for Ethan, inaccessible to his parents. The rest I use to live comfortably. When I look out my window each morning, coffee in hand, I think about the strange turn my life took. At 66 years old, I fought a battle for my dignity, and I won. It wasn't easy, and the emotional cost was high. But as I watch the sun light up the city and feel the freedom to decide my own day, I know it was worth it. Like I tell Ethan when he asks if I'm happy living alone. I'm not alone, kiddo. I'm in the company of the man who knows and respects me the most, myself. Yesterday, as Ethan and I were building a small wooden boat, he asked me a question. Grandpa, will you ever forgive my dad? I put down my tools and looked him in the eye. I already have, Ethan. Forgiving is necessary, so you don't carry that anger. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean putting yourself in a position to be hurt again. Does that mean you'll never live with us again? It means everyone has their own place in the world. Kiddo, mine is this apartment, where I can be myself, and that doesn't stop me from loving you with all my heart. He seemed satisfied with that, and went back to the boat. In the end, what my son, my daughter-in-law, and Robert never understood is that my money was never extra. Every dollar represented sacrifice, hard work, and plans for the future. But more importantly, it represented my right to choose, my autonomy, my dignity. At 66, with less money, but with my freedom intact, I've learned that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to say enough and start over. If my story moved you, or made you think about the value of dignity at any age, please leave a comment and subscribe to William's Revenge Stories. It's never too late to say enough and start over, just like I did at 65.